Everyone, it's me coming on strong. Hope you're feeling blessed no matter where you are. If you don't know who I am, my name is Ashley. I'm a higher self channeler, and I provide services for persons that are looking to get in contact with their personal higher self. I'm just a go-between, a medium that connects persons to their higher consciousness, higher selves, and to the Akashic, so that if they haven't made that connection themselves through my services, they start to believe and understand and connect and feel more confident in that connection. But today what I'm going to be talking about is angels. Basically, I channeled Archangel Michael about a week back, and I'm sorry that this came out later. I did make another video of this exact topic, but I think my son deleted it. So I couldn't find it on my Google Cloud. I couldn't find it anywhere, so I had to make it again, and I don't mind. So this lovely subscriber of ours here in the Familia asked a question about where is Archangel Michael, and I wanted to speak to this instead of sending this person a long-winded message. I'm like, you know what, this might be something, a good challenge and a good video. And I do want to preface this by saying that this is strictly just my interpretation. There are a lot of channelers out there. There's a lot of persons that are very in tune with the angels as well, and just like anything else, there's always different viewpoints. But this is what I've seen from my channeling career for the time I've been working with the angels, so this is what I have to share. So what I did here is I made a three-dimensional self all the way to the 12 or 13 what I would say, if you want to call them realms or dimensions, whatever is easiest for you to digest. Okay, so we're down here in the 3D. Okay, now what I will say is that the first instance of where you may find angels is right here. There are a lot of us that are incarnated earth angels. They are genetically tied, and usually those that have this genealogical predisposition, and you may have met some in your lifetime, and you may be one yourself. And what you'll notice is that those that are of that descendancy tend to be very interconnected with the angels ongoingly, because it's kind of like the sister brotherhood that you came from. So the third dimension is the first. We're the foot soldiers in this dimensional space. However, what I would say the first, let's say where the other legions lie, the first legions, because there's like, let's say 3 breakdowns. I mean, there's a lot of hierarchy that you'll find within the angels, because angels of this capacity can be healing angels, they can be guardian angels, they can be just like watchers in the set. And this is what I would call the 7th. Some people call it 7th heaven, but it's the 7th dimension, or the 7th realm. So this is the first place where you start to see angels. I would say more of the foot soldiers, okay? And I call this the broadcasting dimension. This is where the first watchers are, let's say, stationed. And they can oversee the planet at this level. They're very closely tied, so in order for them to intercede, you will notice, and even like I had mentioned in the channeling I did, even angels of all different walks and all different hierarchies can also come down to the 3 in order to participate or intercede in major events or major situations. And they all are foot soldiers in a sense for God or the creator, whichever way you want to put it. I am a fan. I am a believer in a dual energy female-male creatrix. But you don't have to believe that, but I do believe in that. So if you're not about that, just please click off. But if you can understand that everything in our world is kind of built up on this feminine and masculine energy in a dual existence, when you start to level up to, let's say, the 12th dimension or even the 13th, that's where you find unity, consciousness, complete and full and whole love. And that is where usually our oversoul will start from. There are some of us that have higher dimensional selves past the 13th, but I'm not going to waste my time with that. I'm just going to stick to and focus with this part of it, which is the dual side of the dimensions. So this, let's say, is the light side, and let's say this is the dark side. And what you have to understand is that all dimensional beings can harbor these 2 sides depending on their makeup, okay? But what I will say is that the angels on this broadcasting dimension, they're more suited to helping, aiding those the foot soldiers that are, let's say, the earth angels that are here. I would say the angels are creators. They have most of creator's spark, and also at the same time, what you have to understand is like they are not as interested in evoluting, whereas other, let's say, astral beings are. And if you're not familiar with this, or you don't subscribe to this, these dimensions do not just hold or host just angels. They also host different astral beings, okay? So the reason why angels are so specific to us, okay, is because we are, let's say, God's children, okay? But we also come from very similar lineage as the angels. So that's why we're very close to the angels. That's why they seem more commonplace. But you have to understand that just because they're commonplace doesn't mean that they aren't an abstract being. if you like, a lot of us can subscribe to this idea of a flying being with wings, and that seems normal. But when we talk about astral beings, even humanoid, because a lot of astral beings are very humanoid in nature, they possess a lot of our genetic makeup just like us, that seems very far-fetched. But please open your mind to the idea that angels themselves are also part of this broad creative spark that the all God creatrix provides. So they would be seen as like the watchers or the overseers of this let's say this species, which is the human species, okay, here in the 3D. You have to understand that they also watch over all these other dimensions too, and other beings as well. They're kind of like God's watchers for all these different dimensional spaces, okay, because they kind of keep the balance, they keep time, they keep you know, God's rules, God's regulations, God's and not to say like we're not talking about the commandments as much as we are talking about the actual equilibrium or the balance of the universal law, okay? So this is where you would find the first level of the angels would be in the 7. Now, where you come to the next, where you would see, let's say, cherubim, and let's say the seraphim, is in the 9. Now, like I said, angels do have hierarchies and they do have structure. So what the seraphim are, I would say, are the overseers of the overseers here in 7. They are the watchers of those, and kind of like, if you could think of management, they manage what's going on down in the 7, down in the 5, down in the 3, and all the way through. So they would be what we would, I don't want to make fun of this, but it's just to make it relatable. They're like middle management, put it that way. And then you have the cherubim. Now these guys are so interesting. I've actually been able to meet some human here forms that actually have cherubim as higher selves. And it's interesting because what's really unique about the cherubim, we do see them in the Bible a lot about, you know, little babies floating around and flying around. But they're actually very powerful beings in the sense that they only adorn and deal with one aspect of something. So in the sense of like, let's say the one that is most commonplace to us, Cupid, right, for example, is the angel of love, right, or the cherubim of love. But what's interesting about cherubim is that they are very rightly faceted as a master within their own aspect. So you won't see them being warriors, you won't see them being healers as much. You'll just see them solely as the true master of whatever facet they're designed to oversee. So for example, with Cupid, there's no other angel that understands love more than Cupid. So the cherubim, even though they are seen as children and innocent and all of that, which they are because they're only stationed as one occupier or mastery of one aspect, but they are the best. They are the best at that aspect. So if there was ever an angel that needed to understand an aspect better, they would go to a cherubim that is stationed, that is as mastered and well versed in that one aspect of existence or of creation. And then at the 12th mark over here, this is where you're going to find principalities, archangels, demigods, primordials. And I'm just going to break this down. The principalities, I would say, are the overseers. And sometimes you'll see the principalities kind of up in this 13th dimension too. They're kind of interconnected with what I would call the aeons. Okay. So, even if you could see it this way, okay, Metatron, who is seen as an archangel, I personally think Metatron is a principality, simply because Metatron oversees the Akashic, Metatron oversees wisdom, and oversees not just wisdom, but like all of the timekeeping of our existence, not only here on this planet, but all through the universe or the known universe to our understanding and comprehension. So I would say that he is more of a principality because of what he oversees, what Metatron oversees. Now, what you would understand is as a seraphim level of Metatron, right, you would see Sandalphon, because Sandalphon again would be this direct connection to that principality or that archangel, whichever makes you feel more comfortable. But I truly feel like Metatron is more of a principality, and it's not so much of a designation, it's more of like how much Metatron oversees. But that's why he's interchangeable with an archangel, because it gets a little twisted, because I've never seen Metatron go to battle or anything, or to be of some type of defender or guardian. But he is the guardian of time and space, and also the guardian of knowledge, or of knowledge keeping. So I feel personally that he is more of a principality because of the grandness of what he oversees. But archangels, demigods, primary. Now, demigods, we all understand this. We have this in our a lot of our lore. They are obviously sparks or closer sparks to what we would call, the gods. And what we could understand, the gods may be even understood as the aeons and or the archons. Okay, but at the same time, archangels would be like the highest supreme version of angel, next to God. So why they are put in the same, and the primordials would be very ancient beings, sometimes what we would call cedar race beings. They are so old that over the cast of millions, billions of years, because eternity is forever. But there are some races that came before, let's say, the human race, and they are granted, and because of their level of consciousness that they are privy to, because not only privy, they've evolved to this state, and they have supreme consciousness. They are given this primordial creativity to actually seed other planets, etc. And again, you don't have to believe me, but you would see some race similar to this, like the dragons. Okay, and you might be like, oh, what is that about? Well, go look it up. We have some dragon remnants being found right now as we speak. We don't want to go there, but you never know. Maybe they seeded things like dinosaurs. Just saying. Anyway, so what you'll find is that this is the first plane of existence where unity consciousness or Christos consciousness evolves up until. So why I separated, and here are the aeons and the archons, and why I separated those is because the aeons in the 13th realm, they are seen as the aspects of source or the aspects of God. So you have to understand that even all is all, but if you were to look at it as a pie, you could break that pie down into slivers of aspects that make up the whole, which is love, right? And in the instance of like light and dark, you have to have these both sides, because realistically, even though unity exists, you have to have both sides to be united or a full breadth of understanding. So the archons would be the reflective versions of the aeons. So like, for example, you could see, and this goes back even to the demigods, etc., to the archangels, there are darker versions of these beings as well. And why they are this way is because, let's say, for example, like we imagine that all of these beings are of complete light. Yes, they are. But what can happen is that an archangel, for example, right, because of how high up in the spectrum of consciousness these beings are, they can actually descend to, let's say, the 9th, right, or the 7th if they have to. But those that are in the 7th or the 9th cannot ascend to the 12th. It's all about evolution. You have to evolute as a consciousness to these levels. So you cannot go from 7 to 9 to 12, especially when it comes to the angels, because they are kind of transfixed. They're not interested in evoluting higher simply for the fact that they are transfixed in their positions or their stations. So it's not to say that angels couldn't ascend to, let's say, higher realms. That's not the point. It's just that because they are stationed at a certain place or transfixed as a certain being, or what they are stationed, their interest is to fulfill their station versus being interested in actually ascending to a higher realm. Whereas all other astral beings, that is their purpose. Much like us, we are trying to ascend to, let's say, the 5th dimensional existence and or conscious level. So all that is that we're being able to crystallinely absorb more love and more light. So the only way a species does evolve is through absorbing more light and love. So as you do that, you can ascend past into the next realms. But angels, because they are the closest to God's spark, because they are the, let's say, the watchers for God throughout the universe, they are more content with the stationing that they have. But archangels, for example, like I said, when I channeled Michael, Michael had to descend downward, and the closest I can channel an angel is in 7. Okay, I mean, I could, because when you channel, what you have to understand is that I'm in the 3D. We all have streams where we have different higher aspects, higher selves within this. So this is the stream right here, and I'm trying to explain. So for you to actually rise as a 3rd dimensional being, to rise to the quickening and or the resonance capable to hear an angel speak or to see or meet an angel, it would be almost, not to say next to impossible, for you to rise to the 12th dimension, because most likely, if any of you have had your ears chime, it's quite high pitch. Okay, so if you were to try to raise your actual soul to that level from a 3rd dimensional state, you would probably, your ears would bleed, or you would quicken too quickly and you might pop. Put it that way. Whereas when I channel, I can go higher in my stream. Let's say, for example, I would speak with my 12th dimensional self to speak to Michael at that level. But usually when I channel, that's not what I'm doing. What I'm doing is I'm asking the archangel to descend to 7. So it's not as hard for me to connect, because that's the broadcasting point where in which, and it's not to say that angels can't come to the 5 or the 6 or the 4. Yes, they can, but it's just easier for me to speak with most masters, etc., at the 7-dimensional level, because it's not as much quickening that I have to do, or raising in resonance that I have to do to hear them. So another thing I do want to point out as well, like I said, because archangels and cherubim, seraphim, they're at a level, or a conscious level, that they are very close and closer to the embodiment of complete light. So what I would say is that what you'll notice is that if you are conversing with an angel within the 7, that's the closest to human form you're going to interact with. You'll notice that there's more humor there's more understanding. Whereas if you were to speak with an angel at the 9th or the 12th dimension, they don't muck about. There's a huge advancement in the sense of, like, I would say, because the higher you raise in consciousness, the less likely you are to be bogged down by lower ended emotions. So you're going to find the more profound messages come from an angel speaking at the 9th or the 12th level. And it's not to say that an angel will not be as profound in the 7, but it's closer in ratio to this dimension. So they will embody, or be able to embody, more of the darker sided embodiments of emotion. And this is something that people don't understand. Like, when we think about archangels, we think of them as these awesome beings of light, but what you may not understand is that they actually, when they descend, right, they will actually start to become warfaring fighters, defenders, guardians, right? All of these aspects, warriors, etc., fighters, all comes from a darker side, or a darker emotional base. You will not find archangels fighting in the 12th realm. There is unity consciousness there. It is complete love. So the likelihood would be that they would be in the 9th and or the 7th or the 5th or the 3rd when they would convene in this darker sided emotional stance. Because the thing is that once they've risen to the 12th, there is no malice, there is no need for war or anything to that effect. So what I'm saying is that the concept of what we feel we've met in books, etc., of angels would have to be somewhere within the 9th or the 7th version of themselves, because an archangel up here in the 12th would never need to fight. They would be of glorious all love and light. And the thing is that encompassment of love and light also encompasses all of the dark. So it's a meshing, it's a melding of a unity consciousness, or the Christos consciousness, if you want to put it that way. So this is why when people say, why do I complete it by saying light and dark, is because as archangels descend downward into the different realms, the lower realms, like our own, that's where they pick up those lower ended emotions that cause them to be able to have these darker aspects. So that's why when people say, like, oh, dark is bad, it's like, no, actually dark also has its purposes too, especially when you're still dealing with a divided dual consciousness. So that's why, like, for example, when people say, like, oh no, angels are all good, it's like, really, is that all we've ever heard or read about? No. So you have to understand that there are levels of consciousness that even an archangel can come down to. Now, what I would say is that the angels here in the 7th, or the broadcasting level, they're more closer to the overseers, so they're healers, etc. They're going to be interceding more so than an archangel would, but an archangel oversees all of these spaces, and so do principalities, because they're given a lot larger of a space to govern, whereas archangels can kind of free-flowingly go through all of the different dimensional spaces. And it's necessary because they don't just oversee us. They, like I said, keep the balance of universal law within a lot of these realms. So they have a very important placement within the makeup of the universe. So next time somebody explains to you, that the angels watch over us, they truly do, on so many more levels than we can maybe comprehend. But what I want to say is that this is what I've seen so far, and I will continue to learn, and I will continue to grow, and more information I get, I'll definitely share with you guys. If you have any questions about angels and what my knowledge is of it, feel free to ask. But this is what I've seen so far, and this is what I've intermingled with. So I hope that helps. I hope you guys have a wonderful day. Bye for now.